Hello again. So this is the start of DH6006, which is the Teaching and Learning course. And I want to start this, as I do, from where you are, because learning journeys begin, the best learning journeys begin with the learner and where you are and what you know and what motivates you about the particular topic. And as we go along, we will build on that from that starting point. But initially, I'm keen to establish where you are, where we are as a learning community, and what motivates people, and what you're interested in teaching, what thing you would like to teach. Now, what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at the student view of Canvas. There's not very much there. I try to keep it as tidy as possible. Occasionally I make it a little messy. On top of the page, there's the link to the departmental timetables and resources, which is a central page on the Digital Humanities Department website with key information that's kept updated there in one place, so it doesn't get confused by having it in multiple places. The other thing that's there is a thing called the progress bar, which has no content at all, but I use it to help us keep track of what we've done and what we have to do. And then the different weekly topics are stacked up below it. There are more things in the background. I may expose more of the inner workings of Canvas in this module because we're talking about teaching and learning. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. And I want to look at the introduction, and I want to set that up and look at how we can have some thoughts and some provocations about the nature of learning. So I'm going to skip out of the student view and go back to the instructor one, where, as you can see, I have more stuff, but not all of which is visible. But I want to look here at the introduction, week 1. And there are two things. There are two readings and a discussion prompt and a discussion thread. So the two things, you may have seen the first one, Ken Robinson's TED Talk. Ken Robinson's TED Talk is a profound critique of the current nature of how the educational system works. The short version is that our education systems work much like producing baked beans. We get the products in at the start, we put them through a production line, we get them out at the end in cans with labels on them. The labels, in the case of this country, being your leaving cert, for example. In the course of that process, anything that doesn't fit the standard definition of the beans we're going to put in the cans either gets discarded, or in the case of the educational system, anything that differs from the norm gets in some way squeezed to fit in. And in the video, Ken Robinson is very critical, particularly of the deployment of medication on ADHD children in the American educational system. And he has some very stark things to say about that. And that, of course, is part of the critique of our production line, square peg, square hole learning system. And obviously, it is in some respects necessary if you're going to put hundreds of thousands of people through an educational system. But it also has its negatives, and Ken tackles those quite vigorously. And a lot of people who've watched this over the years have looked at it and gone and identified with elements of what they see in it. So it is perhaps a little depressing, and it may make you a little angry, and that's fine. The second piece is it's an article by John Seeley Brown. Brown is, for many years, someone who has written about the future of education. He has done a lot of his early core research on learning communities and how learning works and organizational learning. And this is one of his broader reflections. The Mind's on Fire goes back, of course, to the quotation that education is not about the filling of a pail, but it is the lighting a fire. The traditional model of education, which Ken Robinson critiques, is that the student is an empty bucket into which you pour knowledge. The lighting a fire focuses more on the inquisitiveness and inspiring the creativity and the critical thinking skills of the student. So the Minds on Fire piece it is not an academic piece. It is a popular interview magazine article piece based on interviews and discussions with John Seeley Brown. But again, it is a provocation. It is him talking about what education could and should be. So it lays out some aspirations. And people will identify with different parts of it. Different parts of both of these will resonate differently with people because we are, of course, a diverse community of learners. So what I want people to do this week is have a look at those. Think about them. Have a piece of paper beside you while you're reading them. Jot down some immediate reactions. Okay? And then there's a discussion thread up here. And as you can see, it's been there since last year. The date is updated. So it talks about the design of teaching, and what we're going to do is prepare a syllabus for a course and what content we're going to do with, and introduces very briefly the two pieces of reading. Doesn't repeat everything that I've said here. So what I want you to do in the discussion thread is look at those two, write down some reactions, post those in this discussion thread along with what you would like to teach. This doesn't have to be very well formed. We're going to work on the details. It's just a broad ballpark. I really want to teach X, and it can be anything. The idea is that the target audience would be adult learners, 18 and upwards, because that is easier to deal with for various reasons. But the subject matter can be as broad as you like. It can be an academic topic, it can be something related to a research interest, it can be a hobby. It can be something to do with knitting. Whatever. The wider the variety of things we have that we're working on as a knowledge community on how we would teach them, the more different ideas we will thrash out about online teaching and learning and how we can make it work, and therefore the more we will learn. So diversity is good here. And you're not necessarily wedded to this initial topic. You can, shift ground a bit if it turns out that halfway through this is something that doesn't really work. We can work around that and slide through it. So that's basically it. There's the two readings and this question of what would you like to teach. And in fact, I'm going to edit the sequence of this now so that it makes more sense. And then I'm going to post that. And when I edit it, what I will do is I will actually change the due date from last year to this year, because September 2019, no, I don't think so. So you can see changing things in a learning management system is sometimes a little clunky. And we're starting on the 28th, and we want to give people a little time to do this. So let's make it the Sunday. And that will add this to your calendar. So we will click that there, and that will be done, right? And I will save that in a moment after I've rejigged these paragraphs to align more with what I've just said and the sequence I've just said it in, because like the famous river in Greek philosophy, you never step into the same river twice. They never teach the same course exactly the same way twice. And that's part of one of the important things to learn about teaching and learning. You build an outline, you scaffold a framework, but then depending on how things play out, the sequence may sometimes change and the emphasis will change from time to time and from year to year. And certainly every year that students come into this program, things change. My jokes are no longer funny. For example, because I'm getting older. And this year particularly, people's experience of learning will be different. And this means that in order to keep the course fresh and authentic and relevant and useful, we have to move it around a little bit and rearrange the furniture to make sure that we're not just phoning in the same old stuff from year to year. So that's roughly, but don't worry too much about that. We're going to start off, as I said, from where you are. A couple of pieces to get you thinking, get your mind in the groove of thinking about learning and education that may challenge you in some ways. So we're going to have some reactions to that, and brief reactions, and a brief outline of what you might want to teach. Whole thing, 200, 250 words is more than enough. Bear in mind, we all want to read this. This is a discussion forum that everybody will read, and then we'll build on that discussion as we go along. So short is good, brief is good, but everybody's writing style will be different. And it's an easy topic at the start because we're getting in the shallow end of the pool of online discussions. And as we go along, we will wade out into deeper waters. And I'm going to stop now before I relentlessly flog every dead horse metaphor in my library in the first week of the course. Okay?